Hello, I'm Deb Calvert, and I want to welcome you to this presentation today on the People First Productivity Solutions channel here on Bright Talk. For anybody who's new to Bright Talk, let me give you just a couple of quick tips. First of all, if you have any need for assistance, just click on the orange button, lower left-hand corner of your screen. That orange button is the tech team at Bright Talk, and they're awesome, and they'll help you right away. Something else you should know, right under the video you see of me, right underneath that is a tab that says attachments, and I encourage you to open up that tab. I've loaded up some bonus content for you. One of the things that you'll be sure to want to get right away is that I've given you the slides that I'll be using in today's presentation. I know many of you like to take notes, and you find that those slides are helpful to have right from the start of the presentation. One more thing I would want you to know, and that is that I really enjoy interaction. So if you're here live, if you have any questions at all, just post those for me. You don't have to wait till the end. I'll be looking at those, and I'll try to weave answers in any place that they make sense within the presentation. I'm mostly unscripted, and although we're going to cover the topic, I want to make it unique and customized for you for whatever you're thinking about as we spend the next 45 minutes together. And if you're not attending live, if you came later on demand, well, I'd still love to hear your questions. So just email those to me or give me a call, connect with me on LinkedIn. The way to do that is also in the attachments. And let's just make sure that whatever it is you're looking for, we get your needs met. So today we are talking about a topic that is a big part of our theme this year. Our theme this year is personal effectiveness. It's all about you as an emerging leader, as someone who is a manager in HR or any function, as someone who's looking to make an impact in the work that you do. Well, we've been talking about personal effectiveness. And if you haven't been attending all the sessions this year, of course, they're all available on demand. You can go back and pick up anything at all that you'd like to from these monthly presentations. And while you're here on the channel, go ahead and sign up for the upcoming ones as well. So that's our topic, and I'm Deb Calvert. I'm the president of People First Productivity Solutions. I work in leadership development, and I work in sales productivity and team effectiveness. We've been in business for a little over 15 years. What those three things have in common is that they're all about getting connected with others. They're all about being more effective because you're well connected. You have rich, meaningful ways of interacting with others and of bringing others along with you in whatever vision that you might be championing. So we are going to dive right into the topic. Don't forget, questions at any time are welcome and encouraged. At the end, I'll be asking you to post a review, so make sure you get whatever it is that you came for, and then give me some comments about what you'd like to see done differently in the future. So we are talking today about this big subject, how you can be more effective, how you can get more things done through influence versus authority. Now, I'm going to start by defining this term influence, because I think it sometimes gets a little bit misunderstood, maybe even misused. What we're talking about when we talk about influence is your ability to have some impact on others, on the ways that they think, the opinions that they have, the actions that they ultimately take. What you have said and done has caused them to believe or think or act in ways that they might not have if your influence had not been part of that equation. So some of the synonyms for influence are words like to sway or to induce or persuade. I'm not sure that those words are exactly accurate, but we'll take them. What you don't see on this list are the terms that people sometimes misunderstand about influence. You don't see words like manipulate. Influence is not about manipulating people. It's not about deceiving people. It's not about pressuring people. In fact, the original root word of influence meant to flow into. So there's something about that visual, to flow into, that to me suggests that influence is more natural. It's more easy. It happens more naturally, and it's graceful. It's not something that is abrupt, or something that is heavy-handed, or something that is taking people against their will into another place. And that's why influence is different from authority. Authority, you can get things done in certain jobs because you have a power position. A parent has authority over children. A boss has authority over people who report to that boss. A general in the army has authority over the troops. And when you have authority, people have to do what you make them do, what you tell them to do, what you ask them to do, what you show them how to do. They have to do it because you have some sort of power. And if they don't do what you've asked, well, because of your power, that puts them in a position where there could be some adverse reaction or some consequence because they didn't go along. Influence isn't like that. Influence is a tool that we use when we don't want to use authority or when we don't have authority. We can influence our peers. We can influence people who are at higher levels of the organizational chart. We can influence people in our social circles every day. We have lots and lots of opportunities to influence people. And when we influence people, what we're choosing is a tool that's more natural, that's more free-flowing, it's a little more graceful than coming down with a heavy hand, making people do something. Now, if you are a manager, you have a choice because you already have authority by virtue of your position. So I'm not saying that you should never use your authority. Sometimes it's absolutely essential if people are in danger, if something must be done quickly, if there are going to be big consequences because they don't do something that they need, should, could do, their safety or other implications may be involved. By all means, those are absolutely appropriate times for authority. I've got nothing against authority when it's used properly. The reason to think about influence and the reason that you can get more done through influence than you can through authority is because, well, authority, it has a limited capacity. If you are always and only using authority, do it because I said so, people will begin to resist. They'll rebel. They'll feel resentful of you having that authority and power and lording it over them. So influence is a tool that's more often effective, and it's going to give you a different sort of relationship with people. And as the title of this presentation promised, influence will enable you to get more things done more quickly. So I'm going to spend most of the time on influence. At the end of the presentation, we'll come back and do a little more contrast between the two, but I want to be sure that you're understanding. As I said, I've got nothing against authority. I just want you to use it judiciously. So back over to influence then. Why does it matter? I teed this up for you just a little bit. Let me go deeper. Influence is what really enables you to make a difference. See, with authority, you can get things done, but only so long as you're watching. Only so long as the consequence of not doing it is sufficiently motivating to people. But influence, when you've had this opportunity to flow into someone else, when you help to shape their opinion, when you have helped them to be persuaded or swayed to see things in a new way, well, that's going to last longer. That's more sustainable than your authority would be. But it is about more than just getting people to do what you want. This is not about manipulation for your own gain. This is, as most things in leadership are, this is about the bigger picture, the greater good, and you thinking about the needs of all, including the people that you're hoping to influence. And for that reason, your influence is about unifying people. It's about bringing people together in a collaboration. It's about having a direction that you're going. It's not just influence to get your way, it's influence to bring people toward that vision, those outcomes that they really would like to get to. They just need some help. They need a guide. And you, as a leader, have an opportunity to guide them because you're influencing them. You're helping them to see things in a different way. So when you are a leader, as I'm describing it, you're guiding people, what you're really doing is you're helping to solidify commitments, commitments that people have made. They might need to be reminded of. They might need to see how their own personal interests can be realized by that vision. They need to see how the dots are connected. Your influence is about leveraging lots of other elements that are meaningful to people, elements that they may not have at top of mind. You're not making any of it up. You're helping them to see things more clearly. There are three ingredients to what I'm describing. Three ingredients for you to be influential, and I'll take these one at a time and do a little deeper dive into each one of them. And as simple as this may sound, I don't know that we talk often enough about how these pieces fit together. There absolutely is cause and effect, and there are connections between helping people to feel ennobled. And when they do, they're more likely to be motivated in sustainable ways. And when they are ennobled and they're motivated, there's a sense of two-way trust. Let me walk you through this, and I'll start by defining that term ennoblement. I know it's not one that we use all that often, but it is a real word. I didn't make it up. To ennoble someone means to make them feel worthy or important. The opposite of ennoble is ignoble, and that's a word you may have heard before. That one tends to get used a little more frequently. Ignoble means low in stature, not highly valued, not something that's dignified or respected. So the opposites of all of that's ennoblement. And here again, this is about something authentic. This is not about trying to manipulate people. We're not trying to exalt or honor people or throw false platitudes at them. We're looking at the dignity they have as humans. We're looking at the worth of the individual, and we're looking for ways to ennoble them by bringing that out and by recognizing it. And I really do understand that seems so obvious, but you've probably been in workplaces, I know I have, where we don't treat people like people. We treat them like soft robots. We treat them like automatons who are there just to punch the clock and make the widgets. And that's not very ennobling at all. To ennoble people, there are some very specific actions that you can take. And these actions, remember, are part of you being more influential. Instead of relying on authority, you can get a lot more done when you're authentically ennobling people. You're grateful for the work they do, and you let them know it. You honor their efforts, not just their goals at the end of the year in some review process, but along the way, you see that they're trying. You sense when they're struggling. You're honoring that they keep trying and that they're persistent and that they're resilient and that they're humble enough to ask for help when they need it. They're not penalized for that. They're celebrated for caring enough to want to do better. And that ennoblement, it also takes the form of two-way trust. That means that you as a leader, you're trustworthy, but also you're willing to trust others. You show them your trust. And when I use the word leader, by the way, for those who haven't attended all of the workshops here, I should clarify this. I'm not talking about the people who sit right at the top of the org chart. I'm talking about leadership at every level. Leader can happen with any title. Leadership happens with 3-year-olds on the playground. They they watch each other, they follow each other, they emulate each other. So this is for everyone. This has nothing at all to do with title or rank. You ennoble people in your everyday life. You make them feel special. You tell them when you admire them. You let them know when you value their contributions. All of these are ways that we can ennoble people in the workplace too. And when we ennoble people, they feel more worthy and important. And because of that, because we're doing all these things that you see on screen, and I'm just giving them to you in another look here, when you take the time to go deep, to express that gratitude that you have, to acknowledge that you trust an individual, to show your respect for the individual, not just the work they do, not just the finished product, but the person. When you tell them why you admire them, and you go into detail, you offer specifics. And when you honor them, maybe it's a recognition, maybe it's just that you see them as an individual, different human. When you invite their ideas and their input, you make them feel special, authentically, because they are. All humans are special. We forget that in the workplace. And ultimately, you value their contributions. Here again, not just when it's all said and done at the end of the long project, but throughout, because that's when people need encouragement the most, is when the going gets tough. So ennoblement maybe seems obvious. Perhaps these are just good reminders for you. When you ennoble people, you are going to be more influential because they'll be more likely to listen to your ideas. They'll be more likely to be receptive. That might have buy-in. They'll feel that they've contributed, and you're building an interest in whatever it is you're trying to do. But that's just the first ingredient. It goes hand in hand with the second ingredient of influence, and I believe that that's motivation. So we'll define this word too. Motivation, that is a little bit like influence. It's something that prompts a person to act in a certain way. But motivations are usually described in more concrete kinds of forms. I will motivate you by, or I am motivated by, and most of us can name something. We're motivated by money, financial rewards. We're motivated by security. We're motivated by the opportunity to make a difference. We're motivated by esteem of others and how they're going to feel about us. Right? All of these things are examples of motivation, so it's not quite as vague as the word influence. When you are attempting to motivate someone, you're attempting to induce them, to give them an incentive or a reason, positive or negative, to act in a certain way. And when we are looking to do that for someone else, here in the US, we tend to call that carrot versus stick. So let me give you the visual. Imagine that you've got a donkey, and that donkey has a full load on his back. It's weighty. Now, there are two ways to get that donkey moving. The first is by dangling a carrot in front of him so that he'll walk forward toward that carrot. And the other way to get the donkey moving forward is to use a stick and hit the poor donkey on his back so that he'll move forward to try to avoid that pain. Well, the carrot represents positive motivation. The carrot represents, in the workplace, things like rewards and recognition. Positive motivation, carrots, offer you something that you would like to have. And the stick represents negative motivation, like fear of loss or some sort of pain. Negative motivation causes you to try and avoid something that you believe would be unpleasant. Now, what I have here on screen for you, according to research, the 10 items that you see on screen are the ones in the workplace that people cite as being the most motivating to them at work. The most motivating include public praise, prestige of a win, the ability to make a difference, bonus, paid time off, personal development opportunities. That's the first 5. The second 5 that people say are the most motivating in the workplace are that they're respected by their peers, that they get an opportunity to be a mentor to someone else, that they're included in special project work, that they have solutions like tech solutions that help them, or that they have bright, comfortable surroundings. Now, this research was pre-COVID lockdown work from home, so I'll be interested to see the next body of work that comes out to see if bright, comfortable surroundings are sufficiently motivated to bring people back into the office. Only time will tell. But these are the top 10, and there's something very interesting about this top 10. You've probably noticed already that all 10 of these items that people describe as the most motivating to them at work, well, they're all carrots. There aren't any sticks. There's no negative motivation on this list at all. But don't you think that in many workplaces, there is a tendency to more often rely on the negative motivation? Especially if you're using authority versus influence. We use authority to either say or imply, if you don't do it, blank will happen. And the blank is the negative. You're going to go on a performance plan. You won't get that promotion. You won't get the maximum 3% raise that's in the raise pool this year. You won't get the opportunities. There's sort of this undercurrent all the time of stick or negative motivation in the workplace. And yet, the top 10 most motivating are all carrots. Food for thought. Makes me realize that maybe we're emphasizing the wrong things. And even if that's true across all workplaces, it's just the cultural norm of work, or even if it's very true in your company because that's the message from on high, you still have, no matter what your role or title, you still have the opportunities to think about the carrots that you could be offering, the positives that might be more impactful, might make you more influential, since those are the ones people say are more motivating to them. All right, now there's another piece to this that is also something we need to clarify, because there's another place where we perhaps emphasize the wrong kind of motivation. And I'm going to show you this in the form of a box model. You know, what we're mapping here are really 4 kinds of motivation, but they're made up of 2 variables. The first one is whether or not the motivation is positive or negative. Like we've been talking about, that's carrot or stick. So you can light a fire underneath someone. Light a fire underneath someone with negative motivation like fear or pressure. And you can also use those carrots. You can motivate them in positive ways. They might start to feel like bribes if you're constantly doing that, so be careful. But you see, both of those have limited impact. Positive and negative have limited impact if they're extrinsic, meaning if they come from outside of the person. So if I'm trying to motivate you, I can use a carrot or I can use a stick, but it's always going to be extrinsic. It's me trying to motivate you. It comes from outside of you. It's coming from me. I'm the one who's driving the motivation. But I want you to look at what's over here on the right-hand side instead. Still positive or negative, but now instead of coming from outside an individual extrinsically, positive or negative motivation is intrinsic. It comes from the individual himself or herself. Intrinsic motivation, when it's positive, is about my own spark. It's a spark within me, something that sparks my attention, something that is interesting to me, something that I feel is going to personally benefit or stimulate me. And that little spark inside of me, my intrinsic motivation, that flame will burn much brighter and much longer than any fire that you could ever try to light underneath me. Yes, you light a fire underneath me, I'm going to jump because it burns. And I'm going to jump into action because your authority is causing me to want to respond. But as soon as I can escape that feeling of being burned, as soon as I can get out from under your watchful eye, my motivation is going to wane. But if it's an intrinsic spark from within me, that goes everywhere that I go. That burns longer and brighter. It's just much stronger as a motivation. And the same is true with negative intrinsic motivation. It's also longer lasting and portable and something that is going to travel with me no matter where I go, no matter what the setting or circumstance. Negative intrinsic motivation uses all of my past experience, all of my preformed beliefs, all of who I am, my whole value system is tied up in this too, to keep me from doing things or having bad results that I don't want to have. All right, now, so this gives us 4 choices, right? We've got the positive intrinsic motivation. I already told you that's the number one most compelling, most effective way to motivate someone. The second most effective is negative intrinsic, still from inside the person. Third most effective, now we're back to the left-hand side, upper left. Third most effective way to motivate somebody is with positive extrinsics. Those are your carrots. And the least effective way of all to motivate a person is negative extrinsic. Those threats, even if they're just implied in our workplace, may not be serving us all that well. And we're trying to be influential. This is about getting things done through influence versus authority. So I would just want you to be thinking about how you can motivate people or help them to be motivated intrinsically, because that's going to make you more effective. So let's talk about how to do that. How do I begin to help someone be motivated intrinsically as opposed to me offering incentives and rewards and even sticks? Well, we have to be able to get to the individual level. We have to be able to get to the heart of a person, not just to what they do with their hands, with their body, the physical output that they have. That is where we often focus in the workplace. That's why we always focus on extrinsic motivation, because it's just some output or KPI. But if we can go a little bit deeper means now we're talking to people about how they do things. We're engaging them mentally, giving them some latitude, some input. We're dignifying them and ennobling them because we are helping them to know how to do the work, and we're giving them some latitude to contribute to how the work is done. But if we want to get all the way to the heart, to that little spark inside to where they care about the work and they genuinely take an interest in the outcomes, to get all the way there, people need to know why. Why should I do this work? Why should I do it that way? Why is this going to matter in the long term? And what I'm telling you, this, by the way, this graphic comes from Simon Sinek, but what I'm telling you, this applies to influence anywhere, with your teenagers, with your team members and your peers, with your manager, up, down, all around the org chart. Leaders inspire a vision, and it's a shared vision, not just their own vision. One of the behaviors of inspiring a shared vision that we know from Jim Kouzes and Barry Posner's research is that effective, influential leaders who inspire a shared vision, one of the ways they do that is that they tell people how their own personal interests can be realized by participating in realization of the vision. So in other words, instead of saying to you, do this because I'll give you a reward, instead of that, I get to know your own personal why. Why do you work? Why do you make this paycheck? Why do you care about the work that we're doing? And if I know you and I know what matters to you, then I help you to see that let's say your personal motivation is that you are really wanting a good future for your young children. You're putting money away for their college fund. Well, maybe that's what I talk about. I don't just say I'm going to give you this money. I say, hey, if we can all complete this successfully, we'll make the bonus. And for you, that means a little extra in that college fund. Getting to your intrinsic motivation makes me more influential and effective, and it gives you exactly what you want. It helps you to see how you can get what you want, and I ennoble you as a human, make you feel worthy and important, and a sense of connection, because you're going to be able to get something you want. You're not doing it just for me or just for the organization. You're doing it for you. And that's not selfish. That's just real. That's how humans operate. So another box model for you. We're going to get all the way to how do we individually motivate people. Dave Ulrich says that it's something like this, that we can focus on relationships and we can focus on accomplishments. Those are by and large where most types of motivation lie. But we need to know what matters to people. If I'm highly focused on relationships and highly focused on accomplishments, I'm in the upper right-hand box. What matters to me is an opportunity to be empowered, because that will satisfy my relationship and my accomplishment focus. But if I'm someone who is really much more focused on relationships, but not so much on accomplishments, lower right-hand corner, what matters to me is connection. You can intrinsically motivate me by giving me opportunities to be more connected to more people. If you were to only be focusing on the accomplishments and not the relationships, you would miss the opportunity to give me some intrinsic motivation. So what we're doing here is we're personalizing how we motivate people depending on what matters to them. And I can't think of anything that makes more sense. Right? This is how we get things done without putting words to it, without attending presentations about it. But you've done this before. When you know what someone cares about, that's what you talk about. That's what you help them to see in anything that you ask them to do. If somebody, by the way, is focused on relationships and they are also they're focused on accomplishments, but not so much on relationships. Upper left-hand corner is achievement. So here's where rewards and recognitions come in. And someone who doesn't have a very high focus on either relationships or accomplishments, they might want insights. They're in this for the study, for the learning, for the opportunity to grow and develop in some other way. Just knowing these things, and you can often tell them by barely knowing somebody, just watching what they talk about and how they interact, knowing just these few things can help you to customize your motivation in ways that make it intrinsic and positive for individuals. And that is what leaders do. Remember, leaders are guides. No matter what the job role is, leaders guide people. They make meaning out of what matters to an individual. Leaders are meaning makers. I'm going to help make sense of what I'm asking you to do. I'm going to put personal meaning into it so that you can see yourself within it, and then you can be motivated by it. That's what we're after here. Now, this is a little trickier. It takes a little practice. The human brain might work against us just a little bit in the workplace when it comes to getting people to express their own why. And it's because we have three different parts of the brain that are in operation. The neocortex, I call it the business brain. The neocortex speaks in logic and rational thought and uses business terminology and acronyms and is very professional and tries to always get things right. We do a lot of processing with our business brain before we ever utter a word. But we're human, So even if we're expressing things with our business brain, what's going on in the limbic brain is always, always happening, even if we don't reveal it to others. I call the limbic brain, that's the center of our feelings, I call that the ennobled brain because it's where trust and loyalty form. People trust others who trust them. People are loyal to others who make them feel good and important. So, in business, whether we acknowledge it or not, the limbic brain is always in operation, and we have opportunities to connect with people there, to go beyond the business brain and into the ennobled brain and form greater, stronger, deeper connections with people. When we do that, we give them a sense of belonging and they will be more engaged. If you want to know more about employee engagement, well, check out the other presentations here. There are lots of them about that topic. Below the surface, even though, of the neocortex and the limbic brain, that's the reptilian brain. That's the flight or fight response brain. It's the brain that jumps into action regardless of thoughts and feelings. It's a survival piece of our brain. But in the workplace, I call it the automaton brain. When we're not talking to people about the things that matter to them, when we're treating them like soft robots, when we are acting as if a workforce that churns every 30 days is normal, as you see in so many retail and fast food establishments, for example, well, that's automated. People are coming and going and choosing the actions that they have in the workplace based on what's happening in that exact moment. Not about trust and loyalty, not about rational thought, not about learning or the other items that could motivate them intrinsically. If you rely only on extrinsic motivation and you don't ennoble people, the best you've got is a fragile connection to that reptilian brain, and they may not stick around. If you want to really get people to know you and to know your business, and if you want to ennoble them and create something bigger and better, you've got to get the limbic brain engaged, the ennobled brain. And if you want to get to a place where you really are mastering that sort of a connection where you can be very influential, then you need our third ingredient of influence, which is trust. And there is a connection here. Why? Telling people why, helping people to see what's in it for them and why they should take the actions you ask them to take. Well, that leads to trust. Trust, by the way, has to be a two-way street. Trust isn't just that you are trustworthy, but it's also that you trust others, that you're willing to extend trust. Might be hard for folks like me who are I'm kind of a control freak, but I've learned to delegate. I've learned even to give people second chances when they've breached my trust, mainly because I see that when that happens, it's usually my fault. I didn't communicate as well as I should have, could have. And so that compromises what they were able to do. So trust. Trust means in a workplace that you get lots of big benefits. Innovation, people trying, people failing, people trying again. All of that happens in environments where there's a higher degree of trust. And to get progressing toward trust, well, you have to do what Simon Sinek said. You have to show them what and how and why. When you have all three of those in balance, that's how you build trust. That's how people perceive that they are trusted. That's where they feel more connected. So you see, that's the connection here that brings us back to the limbic brain, which I call the ennobled brain. When we sense that somebody else is motivated only by their own self-gain, well, that's when we stop trusting people. And conversely, when we see that they are driven by things other than their own self-gain, for example, when you say to someone, here's what's in it for you, here's how this will help you to accomplish what you want to accomplish, when that little spark is realized, that's where you begin to build trust. Now, I know in the world we live in today, that work from home, doing your meetings on Teams or Zoom, it's difficult to ascertain what people's values are. But it's not impossible. It may require having more one-to-one conversations with them. It might even require asking them, "Hey, what really matters to you? Like, why do you get up and come to work every morning?" But you can also tell by the sorts of questions they ask, by the things that get them a little excited, they perk up when they talk about certain subjects, by the things that they care about. You might not know them instantly, and yes, we've got this barrier when we're not in the same space, but it is possible, and I promise you, you can do it. Here's this contrast I promised you that we'd come back to. Now that we've been talking about influence, I'm going to call it something else. Let's call influence heart and soul, because it is. When we are ennobling people and we're motivating them and we're building bonds of trust with them, well, that's a heart and soul form of leadership or connection. The other type, authority, that's command and control. And I'm going to take a question that was just posted here, which is, do most leaders use authority when they're not competent or have limited depth to do their work? And I think that's a great question. I'm going to answer not from research because I don't know the research that there might be out there about this, but I'll answer from my own experience. I think they absolutely do. In fact, I bet any of us, I'll fess up first, when I when I have a little lack of confidence because I'm doing something new or because I don't know the people, I am going to be more reliant on the rule book. I'm going to be perhaps overly dependent on the precedents and the logic as opposed to the humanness and the novelty or uniqueness of a situation. So I do believe for some that we are more like rule followers when we don't have the competence or the confidence to do things any differently, that those rules can become a crutch to us. I do think it's a sign. Again, this is just Deb's opinion, not research-based. I want to extrapolate from here, though, and say I think it's a crutch and even a sign of weak leadership when people only rely on rules and regulations and authority and command and control. And the danger in doing that and only being reliant on your authority is that it exhausts people. And when you really need them to do something, if all you've ever done is command and control, do it because I said so, if you're relying on that exclusively, you lose people and they resist. It becomes harder and harder to get things done. Your effectiveness is compromised. It's not growing, it's diminishing. Unlike when you use influence and people feel connected to you and they feel like they get something from whatever it is you're asking them to do, well, that's where your effectiveness grows. So what I've given you here on screen, these are contrasts. Please remember that the slides are available for you and you can take them and download them and come back and refer to this. But these are contrasts. You could use this as a little self-assessment. And by using it that way, maybe you can do some diagnosis of places where you could balance your authority with more influence. Or you could check yourself if you happen to be relying more on influence. Please keep in mind, though, what I said at the very beginning. I am not opposed at all to authority. In fact, both my parents were Marine Corps drill sergeants. I'm very familiar with authority, and I think it has a place. I think it has a purpose. And I think, though, that a well-rounded leader is able to access both authority in the right situation, influence for the longer term, more sustainable opportunities that we have to help people grow and to take people where they want to be on a shared vision voyage together. That about wraps our time up. We did go pretty quick there. So let me wrap up by saying our brand new version 2 of Workplace Conversations is now available. and I really am excited by it. It was informed a lot by previous customers and even by those of you who attend these presentations and give me feedback. And so with version 2, this program's been around for over 10 years. It's our most popular workplace conversations. But version 2 has many new opportunities within it. There's a download here you can take if you'd like to see those modules at a glance. And the live, virtual, or same space programs are now being rolled out. The e-learning will come in about 6 or 8 weeks. Let me know if you have any interest in that program. It is dually supervisory skills and leadership development. I'm Deb Calvert. I always appreciate you being here with me. Do me a favor, please, and post a little comment or review for me so I know what you liked, and I'll know what you'd like to see done differently in the future.